It might sound cliche, but water is life. You can't survive without clean water, and water pollution presents a direct and real threat to public health. For those driving across the state border, you'll see a sign that says West Virginia, wild and wonderful. West Virginia is wild and wonderful in the best of ways. It features unique ecosystems and extensive natural beauties that can sometimes be found in the most unexpected places. Deckers Creek begins as a trickle in Preston County and flows downstream to its confluence with the Monongalia River in downtown Morgantown, West Virginia. Where Deckers Creek enters the Mon River, it's less than a mile from the downtown campus of West Virginia University. Deckers Creek also has some beautiful stretches. It meanders and cascades down through a steep gorge and is popular among whitewater kayakers as well as fly fishermen and bikers, walkers, hikers alike. Unfortunately, the most polluted stretches are also the most populated.
Well, he built the biggest steel that Morgantown's ever seen. Copper, corn,
this natural
firewood, and the
beauty
water
is
from
directly
Deckers Creek.
threatened by environmental pollution. Who wants to swim in a creek that's bright orange? And who wants to fish in a creek where you're not going to catch fish?
Well, we tried to warn them about the upper mine.
To understand what's going on with the Richard Mine and Deckers Creek, take a hike along the rail trail. If you start upstream of the Richard Mine, it looks like a normal mountain stream. The rocks look normal, the water's nice and clear, there's a lot of fish, and then you come down to this area below the Richard Mine, and it's a whole different story. You can see the results of the acidity and all of the high levels of iron and aluminum that enter the creek at the Richard Mine are manifested here because you have almost no fish, you have almost no macroinvertebrates, which we call bugs, for the fish to eat. So it's a very simple ecology, meaning not much in the way of life.
The Richard Mine, the Goliath of Deckers Creek, is an abandoned mine that's the worst polluter of our watershed. It adds about 292,000 pounds of acid mine drainage a year. And the reason this abandoned mine exists is because it was mined prior to the Surface Mining Act of 1977, as well as the Clean Water Act of 1972. And because of that, the coal company that mined it wasn't required to clean up the mine after the fact.
The Richard Mine has enough acidity to dissolve 1 or 2 tons of limestone. It has that much acidity every day. It also adds 600 to 800 pounds of aluminum and iron every day. When that goes into the creek, it turns the clear water turbid, and dissolved aluminum is very rough on fish. And then the iron comes out of solution and coats the bottom, clogs up the habitat where the benthic macroinvertebrates live. Of course, that's what fish like to eat.
Overall, Appalachia, coal mining has had, some potential consequences on the stream ecosystems that are associated with those areas where historic coal mining did exist. The pH actually declines or acidity increases, and this reduces the relative number of fish or species of fish that can occupy these kind of habitats under those constrained or increased acidic time periods.
Deckers Creek provides a plethora of fishing opportunities, from trout to muskie to walleye to suckers, whatever you're into. I think you can catch it here in Deckers Creek. I mean, the mouth of Decker's Creek, right where it meets the Mon, you'll see a lot of the bigger fishes. And, you know, the Decker's Creek itself kind of acts as a nursery habitat for these fishes in a very vulnerable stage in their life when they're small. And that often leads to good fishing, too, when you have this, you know, corralling of fishes.
Acid mine drainage, specifically acid mine drainage from the Richard Mine, is the biggest polluter of the Decker's Creek watershed, but it isn't a pollutant specific to the watershed. It's a common problem for lots of watersheds in Appalachia. Appalachia has the reputation of being coal country because coal is natural and abundant under the ground and inside the mountains. Another mineral that's commonly found in the underground rocks with the Appalachian coal seams is pyrite, which is commonly known as fool's gold because it looks very yellow and shiny in its pure form. The process of acid mine drainage starts with a river and a mine. Because of the abundance of coal, there are hundreds of abandoned mines spread across the Appalachian Mountains, with underground tunnels that are exposing the underground rocks to air and water. Most of these mines were built, mined, and closed down before the Surface Mining and Reclamation Act, so the coal companies who profited off of these mines are no longer responsible for cleaning up after themselves, and the abandoned mine is allowed to continue dumping acid mine drainage into the creek. Pyrite is a mineral composed of the elements iron and sulfur, and it is plentiful in Appalachia, just like coal. When these mines introduced underground tunnels, tons of minerals that were previously inside the earth were exposed to water and oxygen. For the most part, these minerals are harmless when underground, but when pyrite is exposed to both water and oxygen, it breaks down into acidic iron and sulfate ions, which not only make the river orange and smell like rotten eggs, but also dangerously pollutes the creek and makes the water unsafe and inhabitable. So how long will acid mine drainage flow? Unfortunately, it will flow into perpetuity, at least in our lifetime and the lifetimes of our future generations. This is why it's important to remediate sources of acid mine drainage. Friends of Decker's Creek built and currently maintains 7 passive treatment sites, which look like large discolored ponds, and 2 active treatment sites, which look like big green silos. With these treatment sites, we have seen dramatic improvements in our watershed.
Passive sites are for less polluted acid mine drainage. They're also the less expensive of our options and treat a lower flow and a lower pollution level of acid mine drainage. Our 2 active sites, those are for our higher pollution areas. Our active treatment sites are a series of dosers. They contain hydrated lime and therefore are more polluted areas. When acid mine drainage exits a mine portal, it's usually exiting about a 2 or a 3 pH. Our treatment sites work to raise that pH from a 2 to a 3 to a neutral 7. When we neutralize the pH, we are dropping those dissolved metals, the iron, the aluminum, the manganese, out of the water. So when you see water coming out of a mine, it actually might be clear, but that's because those dissolved metals are in that water. When it exits the mine and we introduce alkalinity, the pH raises, shoots up, and those metals, they precipitate out of the water and they are collected in our retention ponds. When that water exits the treatment system, it is a neutral 7, and when it enters Decker's Creek, it is a clean water and healthy for the environment and the ecosystem in the creek.
With the water quality improvement that Friends of Decker's Creek and we as a community have supported upstream, addressing AML lands, abandoned mine land, discharges one by one, and with improving the water temperature to support trout, we now have a cold water fishery just outside of town, just outside of an urban area, which is pretty unheard of.
Find from around the holes there so it can go down into the bottom pond.
Through our remediation efforts, we've seen a visible difference as well as an ecological difference in Decker's Creek. In areas where brown trout at once couldn't survive, they're now thriving. In addition to that, it's residents of Monongalia and Preston Counties are reaping those benefits. They're seeing an area where they can recreate in, which once was filled with illegal dumps, as well as ram bright orange. Please come up here.
I always tell people that the rail trail in Morgantown is one of the best things that ever happened to the city, and Friends of Deckers Creek is probably the best thing that ever happened to the Deckers Creek Rail Trail.
So I'll have you guys come up orderly if possible to grab a pair of gloves for yourselves as well as a bag or two.
One of the things about FODC is that it's such an effective organization. It's just amazing what a staff of maybe 2 or 3 people and a team of volunteers with the support of the community and the state and the federal government can accomplish as far as cleaning up the Deckers Creek watershed.
This is a giant dump site.
I feel like these, non-governmental, these nonprofit organizations are, super important in terms of protecting our natural resources, protecting the environment and what's around us. And it really is a testament to how, citizens can get involved in this activism and going out there, feet on the ground, doing the good science and the good work to help preserve and look at or maintain these natural ecosystems and this aquatic resources that they all cherish so much.
Ever since we've slowly been in addressing these pockets of AML lands and discharges in the upper watershed, and water quality has improved through the gorge. I mean, you can see it on social media every day that people are enjoying the creek, people are actively involved in it. They're pursuing recreational opportunities, and I did not see that when I first came here in 2009.
We collected a lot of data on different aspects of the economics. For example, when you remediate the Richard Mine or any of the other sites in the watershed, there's federal money that gets sent into the watershed to do the remediation. And that's good for the local economy because there's local spending to hire people to do the work and to buy supplies and things like that.
Downstream Strategies, an environmental consulting firm in the area, found in an economic study that a restored Deckers Creek could add over $14 million in benefits to the local community. What that involves is raised property values as well as avoided healthcare costs from removing a threat to public health. In addition, they found that over $1.2 million a year would be added through recreation and tourism as a direct result of a restored Deckers Creek.
We have this great resource here that runs through town. It's accessible by the rail trail. And people should be able to just come out here and fish on their lunch break or on a weekend, and people should be able to boat down here and not worry about getting sick. And they should also be able to play in the water, just like a natural water park that's just accessible to anybody. So there's a lot of recreation opportunities, but it's also a benefit because there's business opportunities once it's cleaned up. It would be a great setting for a restaurant that has like a deck overlooking the creek, or a bed and breakfast or something like that. But nobody's going to do that if the creek is dead. But once it comes back to life, I think we'll see people developing close to the creek and close to the rail trail.
The treatment site that the Richard Mine would require would be large scale. It would require more technology, more ongoing operations and maintenance, more people on the ground, and a much larger funding source. That's why Friends of Deckers Creek unfortunately has not been able to treat it yet. The Richard Mine needs sources from local government, state government, and even federal government funding sources to get it up and off the ground.
A swimmable, fishable Deckers Creek is within our grasp. Recently, the Natural Resources Conservation Service awarded $3.375 million to treat the Richard Mine. Yet, while that seems like a lot of money, unfortunately, the high flows and the heavy metals coming from the discharge present an expensive and an extensive challenge. Because of this, we need the community rallied behind us as we search for additional funding for operation and maintenance and work to convince local officials that a clean, swimmable Deckers Creek is worth seeing. What can you do to help? pick up the phone and call your local official and tell them to support the remediation of the Richard Mine, or spread the word by talking with your neighbors and your family and friends. Volunteer to help raise awareness or make a contribution to our efforts. Together, a group of thoughtful, committed citizens can and will change this part of the world for the better.
Creek's gonna rise, better say somebody you love. It's coming down heavy, coming down quick. It ain't gonna stop, it ain't gonna quit. It's in a good Lord. Creek's gonna